Got a little That's What G Said live video stream for you. It's the bracket breakdown. So, had to do this one visually. Eric, makes a lot more sense for the folks to be able to see the bracket as we go through it. And I can post this one on the podcast as well. So, thanks for jumping on a little early this morning. You and I are recording this on Wednesday morning, the day before the actual first round of the NCAA tournament begins. We've got some of the play-in games later tonight. We had the first round of the play-in last night. So, buddy, it's been a lot of work coming over the last couple of weeks just to get here, but I felt like a nice sigh of relief yesterday once I did sort of finalize a lot of my bracket work. I'm sure you kind of feel the same way as I've been digging into team spreadsheets, all their information, all their stuff, game logs, player stuff, who's been hurt, who's not. Now it's sort of all coming together.
Yeah. I mean, all the hard work's playing off. Today's Christmas Eve. I mean, got a big day of basketball tomorrow, and then it just bleeds over till Wednesday, till Friday, excuse me. And, it's a great time of year. I love it. The NIT is going on. We had some good NIT games yesterday too. So it's just a fun time.
So we're going to go through the bracket ourselves. We'll talk about each matchup as we go through. Eric, I'm going to pull our bracket full screen because it looks so funny with your head. It looks like your head's on the body the way that the logo is. Can you see that? You got your head on the body, and then you can see my extra eyebrow on top of me. So I'm going to pull us full screen, so that way we'll just have the bracket up while we're talking, so we can kick back. If you want to take your pants off or anything, feel free, because you won't be on the camera for a little while. So I like to do some of my podcasting naked. So just for anyone out there who's you can be nice and comfortable. You don't have to worry about anything. So just be careful you don't drop anything on yourself in that situation. Let's jump into it, buddy. We're gonna go from the West. We'll start up top with the West, and then we'll go through. So up top with Gonzaga. I mean, they're a heavy favorite. They're the team to beat right now, like the overall 1 seed in the tournament. They play a Georgia State team that I gotta say, of like the bottom tier seeds, they're not just a gimme, right? They're actually a decent team, but they ran into a tough matchup. Like if Georgia State hooked up with one of the weaker 2s or 3s, they could give them a little bit of a run for their money. But I just think Gonzaga is going to have a little bit too much here. So nothing crazy for me. But I do think our first disagreement might come in the Memphis-Boise State game. Tell us a little bit why I think you're on the Boise side.
I like Boise just because of their defense, and Memphis does turn the ball over at an insane clip. And because of that, I think it's going to lead to some free buckets for Boise. We don't know if Bates is going to play. Bates has been out. Bates has been a huge disappointment for Memphis. We don't really know if he's going to play. I know Memphis has the big guy who's going to be a top 10 pick, Duran, but Boise's got 3 dudes over 6'10". So they have a lot of bodies they can throw at him. And it's just a great pace matchup. I mean, Memphis is 29 in the country. Boise is 310. I think Boise is going to be able to control the pace, and Memphis is going to be able to Memphis is going to turn the ball over. But I mean, and we saw last night, like if your point guard, because we're recording this Wednesday, last night in the Wyoming game, their point guard had 7 turnovers in the first half. And I mean, you're just here sitting watching this, and you're like, dude, there's no way they're going to win when your point guard's turning the ball over that much. So I think Boise's going to be able to turn over Memphis. And
Boise State, they had a couple of bad losses early, but they've been very good recently in what's being looked at as an extremely strong conference this year. One of the knocks for them is the bad free throw shooting. They are 65% from the field, number 346 in the country. So like what's going to happen with a lot of these teams, Eric, the top 10, 12 teams in the country probably don't have a whole lot of flaws, and even a lot of them do. There are very few teams that are perfect. And so you'll see with these 2 teams, they're flawed for sure. Boise State has some weaknesses. And then Memphis, you mentioned, their turnover rate extremely high. Number 352 in the country, 22.9 turnovers per game. But then on the flip side, pretty solid defense. They're ranked number 32 overall. Without Amani Bates, since he's been out, they've actually ranked as the 2nd best team in the country over that span, based by Bartovic rankings, only behind Gonzaga, and they're 12-2 since that Penny rant. So this sort of feels like one of those close 8-9 games where you can make cases for both. Neither team is a standout or anything all that impressive. That's probably why they're in the 8-9 line. So Boise State is the lean for Eric here. I'm going to go Memphis. But while we're up here, Eric, I can't get either of these teams past Gonzaga. So I'd have Gonzaga moving through into the Sweet 16 anyways right here over, for me, what will be Memphis.
Yeah, 100%.
So we go below them, Eric, and we have the little 5-4 section in the top of the West here with Uconn up top. So I have Uconn beating New Mexico State. This game opened up around like a 7.5 point favorite or so for Uconn. For them, one of the keys for me is Sanogo. When he's on the court, when he's playing, they're very, very good. One of their losses came to Providence when he was not playing. He does a great job helping them rebound the ball. When he's on the court, they rebound 39% of their missed shots. They are the number one offensive rebounding percentage team in the nation. And so that's a big part of it. They give themselves extra opportunities here. I think against teams that just aren't quite as athletic as them, that's something that Uconn will be able to really capitalize on. So I'm leaning Uconn here over New Mexico State. And then below that in the Arkansas Vermont game. Now, this is going to be one of my first sort of upsets, mainly because I'm not like sold on Vermont necessarily all that much here. This isn't me like loving Vermont. This is just kind of an anti-Arkansas play. And it's because I wouldn't have Arkansas going very far anyways here. Arkansas, for me, would be losing their next game, at the very least one more to Gonzaga. So I think it's a good spot to try to fade a team that I just haven't been all that high on this year. They had a stretch of games earlier in the year where they won 13 of 15. During that stretch, though, they only made 32% of three-point shots. I think that's the kind of thing that you and I would target with like a football team too, or any team that played well, but maybe that stretch of games wasn't quite as good as it might have looked on paper. Maybe they got lucky a couple times. The ball bounced their way. There might have been 3 or 4 games where they won, they could have lost. They won 2 games in overtime. There was another game that they won by 1, another game that they won by 2, and then a game where they were up by 6 against Florida with about 5 minutes to go, where Arkansas was down by 6 to Florida, about 5 minutes to go. Florida in 3 consecutive possessions threw up horrendous shots from 3, and then in those 3 straight, Arkansas made 3 threes. So it was a 9-point swing immediately that just flipped the game. So I don't know how good they are. And maybe this is a little ambitious of me to try to knock them out right away. But some of these things, Eric, come down to how we build our brackets too, right? Sometimes it's you playing against the team, not liking them. Sometimes it's kind of the spot. That's sort of how I looked at this. I'm kind of playing this as the spot in my bracket where I wouldn't have had Arkansas going deeper. So this may be a place where I can get a little advantage if Vermont has a shot. And the betting line on this game, I think, tells you that Vegas and everybody feels like Vermont does have a shot, because this thing is kind of hovered right around 5.
Yeah. This is my thing with Arkansas and Vermont. It kind of reminds me of last year's game with Arkansas against Colgate. Colgate was kind of like the buzz team, kind of like Vermont is this year. Last year Colgate got out to a lead, but the second half, the pressure and the athleticism that Arkansas was able to run at them just got too much. Late turnovers at the end, and Arkansas was able to get the victory. And that's kind of what I think here.
And that's what they've been doing all year too, Arkansas. Like for as much as they've had sort of bad first halves and stuff, they do have some proven players there. You have someone like Note, so late in the game when other teams maybe get a little bit tight, you have the guy that doesn't really get tight. So that is something that helps them a lot too.
On the plus on that, I mean, Arkansas has been battle tested. I mean, like you said, they've been in some wars, some late game wars against Auburn, Kentucky, Florida, where they've been down in crunch time, and they've had to come up with the goods. My thing with Vermont is, when was the last time they're actually tested? You know what I mean? When was the last time was a critical situation? We've seen when we get these teams from the not the Power 6 conference. I mean, year after year with Gonzaga, when they get in these close games, because these kids haven't been in these situations, they make mental mistakes. And I could see Vermont covering, but I actually have Arkansas winning. In the other game with New Mexico State, Uconn, I have New Mexico State going through. Both teams are going to slow down the pace. New Mexico State has advantages, pure shot quality in free throw percentage and in offensive rebounding. And they like to do a lot of dribble threes. Uconn is outside the top 100 defending a dribble three. So I really think like New Mexico State has some advantages in that category. So I actually have New Mexico State going through, but then I have Arkansas beating New Mexico State. So it sets up for me Gonzaga and Arkansas in the Sweet 16.
So this is where we're a little different right off the bat. I'm going to go the opposite. I've got Connecticut getting through. I've got Vermont losing. The thing about Vermont beating Arkansas, with Arkansas, you just got to be careful with Vermont. And because one of the positives with them, they just shoot. They're smart. They take good shots and they shoot at a high clip. So they're not necessarily like going to gun you out of the building with their tempo, but they will make you pay if you turn the ball over, if you're sloppy, because they're just smart about the way they attack you. New Mexico State, they're not bad. I just wonder if some of the athleticism of Connecticut could become a little bit too much for them. So we'll have a slightly different top part of our Western bracket here where I think we both have Gonzaga moving on to the Elite Eight portion, but I actually have Connecticut beating New Mexico State. I have Vermont over Arkansas, and then I've got Connecticut getting through there over Vermont. So Connecticut and Gonzaga in the Sweet 16 for me up there, and then I've got Connecticut, and you've got Gonzaga over Arkansas, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. So let's continue down a little bit and go to the bottom half of the West, Eric. So we start with Alabama up at the 6th spot. As of now, we know that Alabama will play the winner of the Rutgers Notre Dame game, which is later on tonight. So a little more difficult to discuss this game from just a individual standpoint. But man, Alabama, one of the crazier teams in the tournament this year. Alabama is a team that is literally capable of beating anyone and literally capable of losing to anyone. They lost their last 3 games of the year, but they have wins over Gonzaga, Baylor, so 2 number 1 seeds, Tennessee a 3 seed, Arkansas a 4 seed, Houston a 5 seed, LSU a 6 seed. That's a great resume of wins. But they're number 94 in defensive efficiency. And when we get to the tournament, if you're a team if you're like below 60, 70 in defensive efficiency, you're going to be in some serious trouble pretty quickly. I just don't ever think you're going to make it that far unless your team shoots the lights out. So I mean, can they win? Would it be the craziest thing in the world if we saw this team, in 2 weekends beating good teams? No, but I just can't see them doing it consistently back to back to back when they haven't all year long.
Yeah, I mean, they've been so inconsistent. And when you really look at it, how the Oates system is, not really system, but how he plays, is everything's dribble, drive, kick out for an open 3. And this year they're only shooting 31% from the 3. So I mean, they just had the 3-point shots haven't been falling. For me, I think they are too athletic for Notre Dame. Notre Dame plays a lot of zone. They're really not that deep. So if Notre Dame is able to beat Rutgers later this evening, I'll actually have Bama beating Notre Dame.
I think so too. Yeah, I agree. I don't like Notre Dame. I just don't think very much of them at all.
But with Rutgers is that team that, I mean, they're just.
It's funny. Rutgers is kind of like Alabama.
Yeah, they're just such a frustrating team. You got Ron Harper Jr., who's just a money player, but they go through these stretches where they just get away from him, and it's that dorky looking dude with a headband who tries to post you up. There's just, I don't like the way they flow offensively, just doesn't make sense to me. So, I mean, that's a Jekyll and Hyde team. I mean, I think they get it done against Notre Dame, and I think Rutgers gets it done against Alabama just because they'll have the best player on the court with Ron Harper Jr.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning there with you in both of those two. I'd lean Rutgers, Alabama. But yeah, they do. Rutgers is the same type of team. Rutgers has some excellent wins on their resume. Rutgers was the first team in NCAA. Let me just correctly check this fact. Yeah, the first unranked team ever to beat 4 consecutive ranked teams. So they had a really great stretch through their season, but again, they're the type of team that can beat anyone, can lose to anyone. They're inconsistent, but you mentioned with Ron Harper Jr., there could be many nights where they have one of the best, if not maybe the best player on the floor.
Yeah, just give him to him and get out of the way. Like, like sometimes when you have like that player that's just better than people,
Just let him cook.
Playing at the next level.
Yeah.
Give him the ball. Everyone just out of the way and just let him work. So I like Rutgers to make it to the round of 32.
Below Rutgers and Alabama, we've got Texas Tech, Montana State. Hey, shout out to the Bobcats. I was up at Sam Houston. There was an event there for some of the Montana State alum. A lot of the people from Montana State head out to Houston because there's a company there that they do a lot of work for that was, I think, created by a Montana State alum. There's like a program there. So I was rocking the Bobcats hat. I had a drink with the people up there. And so we were talking it was like middle of February about if they thought that they had a chance to make it. We were looking at some of their scores and looking at how the conference was lining up. And so they got the job done. They're going to come in here and play against a Texas Tech team. But I will say, as far as a mid-major team coming in and playing against a major conference team, this is not a great matchup because you end up running into the best defensive team in the country in Texas Tech. And so if you are not able to really, really find ways to crack that defense, I think you're going to be in trouble because this is a very, very good defensive team. And I just don't know if South Dakota State or some of the smaller schools are quite ready for the level of defensive pressure this team is going to put on you.
So here's the thing, like as crazy as it sounds, I think this is Texas Tech's toughest matchup until they meet Gonzaga. As crazy as is ludicrous. No, it's until the Sweet 16, excuse me. Just because Texas Tech does foul a lot, 22% of Montana's points do come from a free throw line. And with the packet in defense, you have to be able to shoot the three. And, Montana State, 37% on the year. So they do shoot at a good clip. I think this game is closer than people think just because of the matchup wise. But, with the size, and the rebounding, I think Texas Tech will be able to sneak out the victory.
So this is a game that you may look to play maybe on a point spread, try to play Montana State.
I'll definitely look at Montana State on the point spread.
I think this was around, I'm going to pull up some of the current lines because a lot of the stuff that I had written down was from the openers. I saw this thing around like 16.
Yeah, and like with Texas Tech struggles, like I've been saying it all year, they struggle a lot from the free throw line. So if you're able to kind of them laying these big numbers,
they're the type of team we always target laying the numbers. Like I love Texas Tech as a dog or in games where they're like a tiny favorite, just in those short games because it doesn't matter that much. But like you said, if they're a bad free throw shooting team, they're not an incredibly efficient like offensive team. They're not going to overwhelm the hell out of you offensively, right? They're fine.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like they shoot fine from two. They're not like an overwhelming 3-point shooting team. They're not going to crush you there. So if they leave a few extra points from the free throw line on the table, now all of a sudden it's going to be tough for them to cover big numbers.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm looking right now. The best line out there is about 15.5.
Yeah. So I would definitely look to take that in a game where I just don't know if I could take Montana State to win. Because like you said, I like the Texas Tech moving forward then against Alabama or Rutgers in that game. And then as we get a slightly below that one, we take a look at the little section with the 2 in this bracket, and that is in this region, and that is Duke. And I've been not very impressed with what we've seen from Duke recently. Eric, Duke lost Coach K's final home game to North Carolina. They lost the ACC final. It wasn't as if they just lost those games either. They got their asses kicked. They weren't in either one of those games, really. I mean, they got beat up. And I don't like looking at teams that got crushed. Teams can have some losses and can have bad matchups, or maybe a game or two where they get crushed and they were missing players and they had some key injury issues or, reasons why, right? But when you see teams that have multiple ass kickings in their last couple weeks coming into the tournament, that's something that concerns me just a little bit. And Duke had that happen twice to teams that are not as good as them.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like we have to remember, and this is like really hard for people to do is these are kids. These are young kids, young adults, and Duke is one of the youngest teams in the NCAA tournament. And I just really feel like the pressure of this being Mike Krzyzewski's last year is just catching up with them. And on top of that, you put on their defensive flaws. I mean, this is just a lot for this team to overcome right now. And
you were hitting on the experience. So they are the metric that is used to grade experience. They have a 0.98 years average, the amount of years that the average player on their team has played. You compare that to the national average, which is 1.9 or 1.87. They are 345 in their ranking as far as being that young. They are literally one of the 15 to 20 youngest, most inexperienced teams in the country. And it kind of shows in these important games now when things tighten up, like they kind of get punched and they don't have as many punches to throw back.
Exactly. And plus, like you mentioned, the defense, last 3 games, they're giving up 38% from 3. And with the way the game is played now, you just can't be giving up that much percentage. So, I definitely have them beating Cal State Fullerton. Fullerton has a transfer from Tennessee, 6'7". EJ Anowski, I mean, he's decent. He can put it up. But I just think with the talent Duke has and that basically being a home game for them with where they're playing, I think they'll be able to get through this game.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do have them losing next round.
Me too. I've got them losing to Davidson in that game. I think you're a Michigan State guy. I know. But I think we're both going to do it to each other in this bracket because I think you're going to zig on my Trojans when we get there in just a minute. Mainly because for Michigan State I actually think that Izzo has done a pretty damn good job with this team this year because I just don't know how good they are, honestly. Like they because they're well coached, they're going to fight. They're going to battle you. They'll probably, throughout the season, they probably won a few games that they shouldn't have won because of that. But, they're just 6-9 in their last 15. They have no real star. They're pretty good at 3-point shooting percentage. They're top 20 in that. And other than that, they're not really great at anything. They're just sort of okay in a lot of spots. Now with Davidson, to me, their ceiling is just a lot higher than Michigan State's in the type of A game that they're able to play. Davidson's probably B- or C level game, though, would be much worse because I don't know what their floor is like from a defensive standpoint. But one of the major positives with Davidson and why I think it's a great matchup for them is they are just a very, very good offensive team overall. And it's not just in one area. They're number 11 in offensive efficiency. They just shoot really, really well. They shoot over 55.5% from the field. They are number 8 in the country in 3-point percentage at 38.5. So I look at this matchup and I think that one of Michigan State's strengths isn't even really a strength in this game. They're a good 3-point shooting team, but the team across from them is actually much more prolific and a better 3-point shooting team. They do have a bad defense, though. So it's not as if Davidson is perfect. And the reason why I kind of read into this is sort of that Grinch in me, Eric. I think the committee was pretty obvious about what they did here. The committee wanted to have a Coach K, Tom Izzo game in the Sweet 16.
Exactly.
They wanted to do that. And I feel like Davidson's probably looking at this going, hey, you know what? Not so fast here. What do you see? This line was pretty close to a pick 'em, right? Is it still right around there, right around 1? Or
I mean, here's the thing. This is the way I look at it: is Michigan State, can shoot the 3, but also they are the top in the Big Ten at defending the 3, which Davidson likes to do. Davidson does have some holes defensively. Michigan State has a huge size advantage with Bingham, who's been playing great lately. To me, that comes down to this: in the Big Ten Big Ten semifinals, literally within a span of 45 seconds. Walker, who's Michigan State's starting point guard, rolled his ankle, didn't come back. And then Hogard hurt his ankle, but he came back. And they usually like to close the game with Hogard and Walker both on the court. So if Walker's not there, and for those who don't know Walker, he played at Northeastern last year. He was the MEAC player player of the year in the conference. Kid's legit. And he's an older guy, kind of calms everyone down, a little bit smoother. He's the guy with the ball in the hands in the go-to situation. So if he can't go, like, reality of the situation is all of Davidson. But if he can go, I think Michigan State just has like too much for Davidson, and their ability to defend the three will be in their favor. I mean, and then I have Michigan State beating Duke.
Yeah, because I've got Davidson beating Duke. I've got Duke losing, and that maybe this could be dangerous when you're building your bracket. Anyone doing, like I said, I wanted to go anti-Michigan State because I think in this spot, because I think people are going to want to pencil that Izzo Coach K game in. But the game that I like Davidson over Duke because of that matchup really well, because the way that Duke's defense is not very good. Like you said, we've seen with Duke recently, their defense is not great. And Davidson could absolutely take advantage of that and stroke the three. That could be a real up and down kind of game. So I think Duke could definitely beat Davidson if they get there. I think either of these teams could beat Duke if they got there. Like I am, as a USC fan, I knew that sort of as I was watching these brackets unfold, I knew that my team was probably going to be on the 7 line. And I was actually, you never want to root for someone, but I would have been totally okay being placed in the little quarter bracket with Duke as the 2, with USC as the 7. I would have felt really good about that. I didn't want to run into Kentucky. I didn't really want to run into maybe Villanova, but I didn't mind Duke, and we'll talk about Auburn in a second when we get there. They just didn't feel like one of these. I don't know how Duke got a 2 and Tennessee got a 3, just based on how those teams were playing coming in, but it doesn't really matter, I guess now. I think Duke could lose to either team in the second round.
And the thing is like with Davidson's motion offense, they run a lot of sets similar to Vodtech, and we saw how much Duke struggled with Vodtech. So Duke's. I mean, anyway, who they play, I'm really confident in them losing. But yeah, I think Texas Tech. I think they have a great matchup with whoever it is.
Yeah. I've got Tech getting through. So I've got Davidson over Duke. So in my little Sweet 16 right there, I have the 3 seed of Texas Tech versus the 10 seed of Davidson. I've got Texas Tech getting through there to them. And then in the final for the West Regional, I've got Gonzaga against Texas Tech there. And I'm going to initially right now, I have Gonzaga moving through. I would love to have Texas Tech move through. That would be the type of game that we were talking about, like the spot that I would love to play Texas Tech as a dog against a team with a really good, awesome offense. Texas Tech could be a defensive type team that Gonzaga hasn't really seen. They've seen St. Mary's. They've seen some pretty good defensive teams. I just don't like that could be the type of defense late in the year for Gonzaga that could be a little bit too much for them. Now that would be a rematch of a game from earlier in the year in December. But with these teams like a Texas Tech right now, they're when they run through their conference play and they get a little bit more battle tested, and that defense has to deal with Baylor's and Kansas's and, those type of teams night in, night out. This is definitely a defense at this point of the year that is going to be better than anything Gonzaga would have faced. That would be a really fun kind of contrast of styles there in a regional final with Texas Tech and Gonzaga.
Yeah, and they played earlier the year. It was tight for a little bit, but I'll definitely probably play Texas Tech plus the points there. But
yeah,
I just think that the 200 monster of
the bigs, too much size.
And I mean, like, I get it. Like, everyone knocks Holmgren because he's like a string bean, but dude, kid's got skill, man.
He's really fun. And it's not as if he's soft, right? I think he's just skinny looking. It was like how Durant is too, It's funny. Think about the crap that Durant would get before he came in. Which is like, can he post up, or is he strong enough? And for a lot of players, that's valid, right? That's something valid. The other guy that I can remember who was sort of like that was Tayshaun Prince, who, your guy who, when Prince was the number 1 ranked high school player in the country when he came in to Kentucky. Because I remember USC wanted to get a sniff with him. And then Prince was someone who you never knew how he was going to make it because he had that weird sort of real thin frame. And the guy was a stud too. So I don't really Holmgren's gotten better and better, and the clip that he shoots from three just feels like Zaga's got a little bit too much. But this is where I could start to look to try to play against Gonzaga now. I just don't think that they get beat. I don't think they could even get beat maybe until here. Like maybe like a Uconn or Arkansas could be athletic enough to where like if Note went nuts or if Cole and the other guy had a decent game for Uconn, but I don't think I could start looking to try to beat Gonzaga until about this spot with Texas Tech. And even then, I still got Gonzaga moving through to the Final Four here.
Yeah, me too. The thing with Tech is they just don't have that one. You need that one guy. You need that guy in the wing that could create.
That could get you 20 if you need, and they have a tough time with that. Like it's all spread out. They're a good team, but sometimes deeper you get into the tournament, you need that, like you said, you need the guy, you need the player, someone you can lean on when shit gets a little bit tough and difficult, and then you have that stretch where Gonzaga's making their run right now, right? You know it's going to happen in games. It's inevitable. Texas Tech plays really well for the first half or for 3/4 of the game, and then all of a sudden here comes Gonzaga on a run. You turn the ball over 2 or 3 times in a row, the momentum starts going. Do you have the guy there at Tech that can quiet that, right? That can go get a bucket, just a mid-range jumper to go to the lane and draw a foul and shoot 2 and just get the momentum back on your side? I don't know if they have that. We'll see. But they are battle-tested. They're well-coached, and they have a fantastic defense. They have a lot of templates for a team that can win and overachieve a little bit. Texas Tech here, going to have them losing in the final, and Gonzaga moving on to the Final Four. Eric, let's head to the bottom part on the left side of the bracket. So let's take a look at the East. And the East begins with Baylor up top as the number 1 seed against Norfolk State. And then we got North Carolina and Marquette there in the 8-9 matchup. So Baylor, they're depleted. Cryer and JTT, 2 of their better players are out, so their depth will be a major question there. Last year, Baylor won all 6 of their tournament games by at least 9 points. That's incredibly dominant there. But I could see them winning a game or 2. I don't think they're good enough with this current roster to beat some of the top 15-ish teams in the country in this tournament. So I've got Baylor getting through probably 2 games, but I'm going to have them losing in a minute to UCLA, and we'll get there. Baylor over Norfolk State for me. And then in the North Carolina Marquette matchup, Eric, I think that game where North Carolina beat Duke in the final in the final game of the year is a game that we're probably digging into a little bit too much when we look at North Carolina. I never thought they were that good this year. They've got wins against Duke, Michigan, Vautech, but then they lost to Vautech. Number 27 ranked offense. They shot 36%-ish from 3 in the regular season. Like, they're fine. Pretty good offensively. Nothing fantastic defensively. And I was just really down on the ACC for a lot of this year. I look at North Carolina in this game, sort of what we were just talking about. If it's a tight game late where they're sort of going back and forth here, a game where North Carolina, I think, is a small favorite, I feel like Marquette might have the better player on the court. This is someone you and I talked a little bit about yesterday when we were doing the bracket breakdown for Better Than Vegas with Justin Lewis, the star freshman. So Marquette with Shaka in a situation like this, no, they haven't been playing all that well lately either. They're 4-6 in their last 10. They lost to Butler. They lost to DePaul. But I'm still going to lean Marquette in this spot over North Carolina. So I'll have Marquette getting through North Carolina. I'll have Baylor beating Marquette to move on there to the Sweet 16. What do you have up in this little portion?
I like Baylor. I know they've had some injuries, but I really don't think they're going to see anyone that can exploit their weaknesses for a while. So I have them going through against Norfolk State. North Carolina, I kind of think the game against Vautech reminded everyone how inefficient they are on the defensive end. Marquette is going to shockingly have the best player on the court. So with Lewis, so I think Marquette's going to be able to get through there. Then I have Baylor beating Marquette just because Baylor can check, and they're going to really frustrate Marquette. And if Marquette's threes aren't falling, they struggle a lot. So I really think Baylor's going to be able to limit Marquette's 3-ball. St. Mary's, Indiana. I know people are going to look to fade St. Mary's, and there's going to be a lot of recency bias toward Indiana and have Indiana going through. St. Mary's is going to shrink the game. And they're really good at limiting your best players' touches.
And they have the big
Yeah.
there at St. Mary's. And the one positive is that big has faced other bigs in Gonzaga. So he's had to deal with other good bigs. Now, the Indiana guy is a little bit probably more athletic than what the Gonzaga guys can throw at you. But I agree. Like, I'm not high on St. Mary's. I mean, they're a fine basketball team, and they have a very good defense. I think they're just a little overseeded, to be fair. Like, to me, St. Mary's is the type of team that if they were like an 11 or 12 seed, I would be looking to play them in an upset against a higher seeded team or like a more power conference team. This is just one of those teams all year long. It's like, I don't know how good they are. I really don't. I do know that they have a good defense. The Indy game might not be the game that they get beat. That's what concerns me. So this is one game where I'm not really all that confident on, but I think have St. Mary's going a couple games, right?
Yeah, I just have St. Mary's just because for me, I'm just so matchup and a little nerdy and analytical that I just think that's mainly how I do this stuff. So that's why I just think it's a great matchup for St. Mary's. And, when you have a big and you're able to get Justin Davis in foul trouble, Indiana's offense does struggle a lot. And this has just been, I don't know. I just feel there's a lot of recency bias toward Indiana right now. So I just like St. Mary's right here. Next game, I said it the other day. Was it yesterday when we had our BTV bracket show? I think Akron's beating UCLA. I just really think that with these mid-majors, a lot of people look at teams that won their conference and won their conference tournament. Akron did not win their conference. So because of that, I think they're getting a little bit overlooked. They have the defensive player of the year in the MAC. They can play fast. They can slow it down. They can make threes. And in a game that's going to be a little bit of a grind out game, I'll take the better 3-point shooting team. I like Akron here. And I think UCLA, I think people are just remembering that run to the Final Four. So I like Akron here to be the shocker that locks a lot of people's team, because every year there's a team that people predict to go far, and this year it seems to be UCLA, and they
got a great draw. Yeah. Like this, anyone in this bracket, because Baylor is a wounded 1 seed. Yeah. So it's a great matchup for UCLA, because I think if you like them or not, right? Like, I have them going much deeper than you, but this whole top bracket, like St. Mary's is really unproven. We have no clue like how St. Mary's is going to respond to being in this situation, right? St. Mary's just getting in the tournament was cool, but now you're a 5 seed where you're favored. You're going to be in a situation where you're supposed to win, and then you're going to be in a situation where you're a legitimate contender. I think that UCLA, I'm kind of on the opposite as you. Like, UCLA last year wasn't very good. UCLA just got in. USC beat the crap out of UCLA late last year over and over. UCLA was one of the last 4 teams that made the tournament. They almost lost in the first game to Michigan State. And then they went on a run and were very, very good throughout the tournament. Now, what I like to see about UCLA, about a month ago, I was really concerned about them. I was going to fade them. I thought they were going to put together a string of bad losses, and they have the little stretch in their season where I think it was they lost 3 of 4 in early February. Since then, they were 8-2. They actually have some pretty decent wins on their card. They beat Villanova earlier in the year. They beat Marquette. They beat Arizona. They beat USC twice. They returned everyone from last year's Final Four. And for me, the key with them is the Juzang ankle. If that ankle is fine, I think they'll be in good shape, because Hawkes has been playing really well. He's a fantastic college basketball player. Really good. So they have everybody back from last year. They're a little bit deeper, but I just like the way they're playing recently. Top 15 in offense and defensive efficiency. So you're right in that they don't shoot the 3 at a great clip, but they do a lot of other things well. And the real thing I like about them is that you're going to have to beat them. They're not going to turn the ball over at all. They're I think 5th in the country in turnover percentage. So they just you better be playing well because they're just not going to beat themselves. I think that's my only concern with Akron, in that I feel like one of the, like, I wouldn't mind playing a team to beat UCLA, but I think it would be like if your South Dakota State team popped UCLA, I'd like the matchup there more. I can understand if maybe you're a little anti UCLA if you think people are jumping on them. I just don't know if I can get there with Akron. I don't know if they're quite good enough in that matchup. I think if I look around at the other 13s, I might have preferred some of the others there. But yeah, this will be fun. We'll have to have a couple of our like a beer bets here in some of the spots where we go elsewhere. Because I've got UCLA getting through Akron. I've got UCLA getting through St. Mary's. And then if they do, UCLA is the exact type of team I would look to beat Baylor, because Baylor is not going to be as deep. UCLA has a lot more depth. They have experience from a team with the team that went last year also. And I think in a game against Baylor, they might be able to have the best player or two on the court, well coached. So give me UCLA moving through St. Mary's, moving through Baylor. I've got UCLA heading into the Elite Eight in the regional final up on this portion. Tell us what you've got to finish off the top part of the East.
I have St. Mary's over Akron. That sets up a Baylor St. Mary's Sweet 16. And I think Scott Drew is a great coach. And I think them winning it in the fashion that they did last year just kind of elevated what he can do coaching wise. So I have Baylor over St. Mary's. I have Baylor going to the Elite Eight.
Baylor moving into the regional final for ERIK. As we head down to the bottom of the East here, we take a look at Texas Va Tech in the 6-11 matchup. So I haven't really been the biggest Texas defender all through the year, but I think I'm looking to fade Va Tech a little bit right here. Texas Tech has a really solid defense, the number 13 defensive efficiency. They're not a great three-point shooting team, just under 33%, actually closer to 32%. They're ranked number 240 in that metric. And they lost their last 3 games, but they were to Baylor, Kansas, and TCU. Then on the flip side, you've got this Va Tech team that's, kind of hot, kind of buzzy. I think a lot of people are jumping in on this Va Tech team because we saw them recently perform very well. Again, though, I think this is another team that if you just checked in the last week, you probably look up and you think Va Tech is really, really good. They won 4 straight days to win the ACC tournament. They're 13-2 in their last 15. They're the number 18 offense. They're number 3 in the nation from 3-point percentage at 39.3%. I just think it runs out here. I'm leaning Texas in this spot, ERIK. Purdue, Yale. I wanted to go the opposite way. Purdue is a team that I'm looking to fade early. I think it's just a situation where if this was Colgate, hell, if it was even Longwood, probably even Montana State, I would fade. I just wasn't that impressed with Yale overall as a team. So I'm going to go Purdue through that first game, but I've got Texas beating Purdue. Purdue's defense is atrocious. They average 80.7 points per game in the regular season, with the 7th in the country. They are 3rd in offensive efficiency. They are 100th in defensive efficiency. And just to give you an idea, ERIK, every team since 2002, so in the last 20 years, out of those 20, 19 out of 20 teams that have won the national title have been in the top 25 in both adjusted offense and defensive efficiency. The only one team that won it all was Uconn, that got hot that one year when they got carried. Other than that, every year, if you're not really balanced and towards the top in both, you probably don't have an opportunity. Like we keep talking about how teams that are really weak in one area, good teams and good coaches and good staffs are going to exploit them, and you're going to get beat. And it's not like in the NBA where you have a series to be able to counter and to react. This is one game. Like somebody sniffs you out and has a good game plan for you in the first half, and you're in some trouble. You may not even have the time to adjust.
Yeah. You kind of hit in the head with your points about Purdue. I look at it like they're one of the worst teams in the country in defending the pick and roll, one of the worst teams in the country defending the 3. I think because of their size, though, I think they're going to be able to get through Yale. I think Edey and Williams will just be too much.
Edey is 7'4".
Yeah, he's just
he's just a monster. What do you do to that?
yeah.
There's like you can't guard him.
There's not much you can do there. Texas Tech. I mean, Texas was up by 20 against TCU and blew it. This team's just kind of they brought in all these transfers, and this was kind of a team where I kind of felt like, hey, you know what? First part of the year, it's going to take them a little bit kind of get organized and kind of, get everything in line. But the second half of the season, they should be able to put it together. They just still haven't put it together. Vatech, I mentioned like they were due for positive shooting regression. Well, they've had some huge positive shooting regression. I think that regression is going to kind of drop down a little bit. They're going to come back to the norm. And the one thing I remember from the NBA playoffs and going to a lot of games in Pfizer, and that's where these two games are, tight rims, man, tight rims. So I think Vatet's going to struggle a little bit shooting. I think Texas's size is going to kind of be able to piece it together. I think I got Texas going through and, beating them, setting up Texas, Purdue in the second round.
Texas, Purdue, and then I've got Texas getting through Purdue there, which is really funny. It's funny when the way these brackets lock up because Texas was a team that I didn't think I would be playing a whole lot, but where their matchup is, I think they could get through Purdue. I really do think it's a good. It's not a great matchup for Purdue just because Texas is going to make it a little bit more difficult for them offensively, just kind of muck things up a little bit, and so I'm going to go Texas getting through Purdue there. I've got on the below them, I've got Kentucky over St. Peter's, and then in the Murray State San Fran the 7-10 game, which I think should be a really good game. That one was kind of a tight game. I think San Francisco opened up as a slight favorite there. Murray State was a team that was excellent through a lot of the year. They won 18 straight. They shot over 55% from inside the 3-point line. And then you go over to San Francisco. That's been a conference that's had a really good sort of sneaky good year. They got a couple teams in the tournament. This is the first time that San Francisco's in since 1998. They have a top 20 defense in the country. I'm leaning Murray State as a team who's just good, man. They found ways how to win all throughout the year. I think for San Francisco, just kind of being here is a big moment for them. So I'm going Murray State through San Francisco, but I don't think Murray State has enough to get by Kentucky here. So I've got Kentucky moving through to the Sweet 16 to play Texas, and then I've got Kentucky continuing along through to the regional final here. The thing about Kentucky, Eric, one of the reasons why I have Kentucky going far in this tournament, they have an upside that I feel might be sort of flying under the radar. Because Kentucky didn't have very many games this year where they had their full complement of players. Only Grady and Shibwe have played in all 30 games this year. And when you dig into some of their losses, they were losses where, Wheeler got hurt. Ty got hurt. They both were out. They didn't have their full group. This is as healthy as they've been. I think it's a great spot for them. Like we said, Kentucky kind of feels like they're the one in this bracket just because of Baylor struggling lately. Baylor's not great performance in the Big 12 tournament, and then Baylor's lack of depth with a couple of their key players out. I think it's a great spot for Kentucky, honestly, because you and I aren't that high on the 3 seed down here in Purdue. You and I aren't that high on the 6 seed down here in Texas. I feel like this quarter bracket for them is great. Heck, you're not that high on UCLA. I'm not that high on St. Mary's. This whole bracket feels like it's really, any team could lose any time, but great draw for Kentucky as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they're in a pretty good position. Bottom half, this Murray State San Francisco game. This game's a tough little game. San Francisco, they turn the ball over a lot. They force turnovers. No, sorry. San Francisco turns the ball over and Murray State forces turnovers, but San Francisco shoots the 3 at such a high percentage that, if you get hot, it can be a little worrisome. I think Murray State does have the advantage, though, in terms of rebounding. Kentucky over St. Peter's. St. Peter's does have a big that's going to be able to guard Sheboy for a little bit, but I think Kentucky's just got way too much depth, way too much firepower. I have them over Murray State, which should be a fun game for a
Yeah,
half.
it should.
I think Murray
Half,
State
right? I think you've hit that a few times.
fun.
I feel like Murray State will play them hard early, and then just the Sheboy, the size, the Sheboy stat that I love. Kentucky has rebounded 40% of their missed shots when Sheboy is on the court.
Yeah.
That's just nuts.
It's insane. The one thing though, and I said this yesterday, that worries me about Kentucky is Calipari always takes him off the court in the first half if he gets 2 fouls. And the offense isn't as free flowing with him out when he's out. And we saw that in the game against Tennessee. So that's my one worry with Kentucky, is just because if Sheboy gets in foul trouble, what's going to happen? I have them playing Texas. I love Chris Bird. I think he's an insanely underrated coach. And his story about how he started to get free salsa on his breakfast burrito after he made it to the Final Four is one of the best stories in college basketball. And then Elite Eight, I have Kentucky against Baylor. Baylor does struggle defending the rim, and Sheboy is going to be able to take advantage of that. So I have Kentucky coming out of here, and that's setting up a Kentucky Gonzaga Final Four for me on this half of the bracket.
Yep, we've got the same two moving through there. That would be a really fun powerhouse type of game with the size there, right? Sheboy versus the bigs of Holmgren and Timmy there, who, heck, those are, when you talk about bigs, like those are 3 completely different style bigs.
Yeah.
Those 3 guys, the way they play, totally different. So that'd be fascinating to see the 3 of them all lock up. Eric, let's head on over to the South. Let's start up top with Arizona. So they're going to play the winner of the Wright-Bryant game, which we'll tip off a little later on this evening. I don't know if either of those teams has the firepower to get through Arizona. In the Seton Hall TCU matchup, I think this is my least favorite matchup in the whole tournament. I just don't like either of these teams all that much. I was probably going to be looking to fade the 2 of them. Seton Hall, they're not a great 3-point shooting team. I just don't like the way they play offensively. It's really inefficient. They play like a lot of one-on-one game. They don't move the ball. There's not a lot of flow. They take low percentage 2-point shots. They're a lot easier to defend, against good teams. TCU, on the flip side, they're 3-6 in their last 9. They lost 3 of their last 4. They're an awful 3-point shooting team, and they're a terrible free throw shooting team. So they don't shoot threes well. They don't shoot free throws well, but they're a very good offensive rebounding team. I probably lean Seton Hall here. I don't have the strongest opinion in the world. Then shit gets a little crazy for me right below this, Eric. So I have been wanting to try to attack Houston for a lot of this year. And I think Houston is very well coached. I give a ton of credit to their program and what they've been able to do after last year's Final Four run, getting them back to this point, getting them in a 5 spot. They haven't beat anybody, man. I mean, they're top 11 in both adjusted offense and defensive efficiency. Their best wins this year, Memphis and Oklahoma State. And they lost twice to Memphis. They beat them the 3rd time. Okay, they looked good beating them the 3rd time, but was it like a revenge game? Of course, when Memphis beat you twice earlier on in the year, I don't think Houston's that great. I think in this situation, UAB is going to have the best player on the court there. And this is going to be Jordan Walker time. He averages over 20 points per game. He shoots over 40% from 3. And the team overall, when he's on the court, shoots over 40% from 3. So he makes the guys around him better. I think UAB has a legit shot to win this game. I'm going to play UAB with the spread. I'm going to play him a little money line. I've got UAB getting through. And I think I'm going to do it. I've wavered back and forth. There's always that 1 or 2 spots where things get a little crazy. Don't love what I've seen from Illinois recently. They laid an egg last year. Was it last year? Yeah. And it's not, the worry is the size, right? With Kofi, can DeSalsa, the Kansas transfer, body him up enough? You were kind of hitting on it with Chattanooga though. The metrics for them in their like 2-point defensive, like their field goal percentage and inside the arc, it's just not as good as it should be. That scares me. but I wouldn't. This is another one of those bracket picks for me. I wasn't going to have Illinois, I think, beating Arizona or winning more than one more game after this. So I'm getting crazy, Eric. I'm going UAB, the 12 seed over the 5. I'm going the 13 over the 4 here. So I'm going to have a UAB Chattanooga 12-13, which will lead me to Arizona UAB in the Sweet 16. So I think the 12 seed is going to get through and win 2 here. Tell us what you have in these in this little quarter bracket.
I have Arizona over whoever. TCU Seton Hall, that's big boy basketball. That's going to be a dogfight. Both teams are really good defensively. I give TCU the edge. I have TCU going through. Seton Hall, if they're 100% healthy, I'd like a lot more, but they have some injuries going into this. TCU has the advantage on the offensive glass, which is huge for them. And also Seton Hall's offense is a lot of ISO, and TCU is top 30. I believe they're 29 in defending isolation basketball. So it's just a good matchup for TCU. So I have TCU going through. I've been on Houston. I'm not a big Houston guy. And then they lost their best player. They had another guy go down. They had a guy get hurt in the American tournament. So with a team that's not that deep, it is worrisome for them going into a tournament because they just don't play a lot of guys. And the key stat for me is on open three-pointers. That means no one's within 4 feet of them. Teams are only shooting 33%. So you're getting a lot of looks.
That's luck. That's not them doing anything, right? That's something that will even out. That's a great stat to point out because we see things like that sometimes and people go, oh, well, that team is a really good defensive team or they're really good defending the 3. No, if you watch the game, they're just missing. And that's not going to add up. That's not going to continue.
So because of that, and UAB, 38.4% on the year shooting 3, I think they're going to be able to knock down some threes. And I just love Jelly Walker, man. I think this kid is great. The one issue for UAB would be they do struggle a little bit rebounding, especially against size. So Houston rebounding could be a little bit of an issue, but I expect UAB to be able to knock down some threes. In terms of Illinois, Chattanooga, Kofi really struggles when you have a big that takes him out and you do a lot of pick and roll. Loyola Chicago really exposed that last year in that second round game. And that's just not the way Chattanooga plays. So because of that, I have Illinois advancing through. Illinois against UAB, I think is going to be a really interesting game, but because of the size, I have Illinois going through to set up a game against Arkansas. But
I think against Arizona, you said Arkansas.
Oh, sorry.
You meant Arizona. No worries. It was a slip.
TCU will punch you in the effing face, man. I mean, this is one of those old school pit teams that Jamie Dixon used to have, where there's no real stud, just 5 guys that compete, get on the ground, and rebound the crap out of it. So I am going to definitely bet on TCU against Arizona. I think Arizona gets through, but I think that game's going to be a lot closer than people think. Look,
in Arizona, I think as much as the Krista stuff, like they may be a better team without him. They may be more of like an open flowing team because they still have some talent, but that might be a game against TCU where he might have been needed, or they may struggle a little bit without him. Just that extra guy moving the ball around against the tough team, like just another like ball handler who can get guys involved. So that could be a spot where they miss him a little bit. And if you saw that guy's ankle, I mean,
he's done.
If he steps foot on the court, that's like malpractice.
Yeah.
You cannot let that guy come out and play at least his first weekend. There's no way. And it doesn't make any sense. You cannot do that to him. I agree with you. I don't think Arizona's kind of becoming like a pretty buzzy team because it feels like they got a great draw too, where they are at the top half of their bracket. There's nobody all that overwhelming. And even the 4 or 5 teams here we're talking about, we're talking with Illinois. Like, I don't think either one of us think those teams are overwhelming. So that might be a good spot to play at TCU. What's nice about TCU too is like you said, they'll fight you. They've played Kansas, they've played Baylor, they've played Tech, they've played these tough teams, they've played some good offensive teams too. So they're not going to be scared looking across the court and seeing a good Arizona team.
Yeah, and this is the best analogy I can have for TCU, the way they play basketball. You're in an alley and you're in a street fight. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to constantly be physical, body you up, make you work. You know what I mean? It's just, God, I'm talking myself into taking TCU right now, man. But
and I can understand why the matchup wise. I just don't know. Like we said, if this game gets close and TCU can't shoot and can't make free throws, that's where
that's the breaker right there. But,
yeah, that's where I'm concerned because Arizona,
I could easily see them just gucking up the game though.
100%
physical.
What do you think if let's project right here? If both of these two teams were to win their game, would it be Arizona -10?
I think it would be 6 or 7.
I think it'd be in between because if it was, I'm trying to think to give you an example, Arizona was basically like that against USC this year, right? And trying to think about they would be probably projected pretty similar in the betting lines, I think. So yeah, I mean that would be, if it was over, it would be over 5, and it would probably be between 5 and 10. I think it would be a little bit closer to double digits, and if that was the case, you'd definitely be jumping in if it was 9, 10, close to that. But yeah, I feel again, obviously it depends on how these two teams win their first game too, right? If TCU looks really impressive, that they'll
and who knows, Setonall's got dudes. If Setonall's 100% healthy, I could see them being TCU, but it's just hard right now just because we don't know until the day of the game what exactly is going to be happening and who exactly is going to be playing. So I'm projecting what I've read so far, and that says Seton Hall's not healthy. That's why I have TCU going through.
Let us get to
and then I have Illinois beating UAB, setting up Illinois and Arizona.
And that would be a good game and sort of a weird matchup for Arizona.
Yeah, because here's the thing with Illinois. You look at them and they have the dudes, they have the talent, but I'll use the term a brain fart.
I know. It's there's something missing. I can't put my finger on it. It's an intangible there that you just doing? I know. And they don't get over the hump, Yeah.
But I just don't know. And we saw, I said it when we did our show on Thursday, that Michigan's got Dickerson, Indiana's got Jackson Davis. Those guys will be able to will carry them over a win because of Kofi's defensive efficiency. I just don't know if Arizona's got the inside game to exploit Kofi defensively and will use the pick and roll enough to exploit Kofi defensively. Because of that, I have Illinois beating Arizona in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, see, I think matchup-wise, though, I feel like the size could be a problem for him on the flip side, too, right? If Kofi's not on the court, shocker here. If their best player is not on the court, they're not as good, right? So when he's not on the court, they're 14 points per game less. If he gets in foul trouble or when he comes out for a quick breather, their team completely drops. Where I look at Arizona is I think with their size, with 6'11" Tabellis, with Koloko, 7 foot, and even Benedict, who's decent size. I think there's a 6'6", 6'7" kind of slasher guy there. So I think that might be a little difficult for Kofi trying to defend the multiples of them. And so I'm going to lean Arizona there in a game where actually, like I said, I'm picking the upset early. Of course, if it were UAB Illinois, I think Illinois would get through there, right? And then in this game, the Illinois Arizona game would be a fun matchup. When you're building your brackets, sometimes you go matchup, game, everything individually. And other times, like we're saying, it's sort of like a bracket fade. Okay, is Illinois probably the more likely winner than Chattanooga? Sure. But this might be a fun spot for me to get an upset when a lot of other people are leaning in a different way, when I wouldn't have Illinois going that far. I build my bracket like that sometimes, sort of thinking about how I can win a bracket contest or, just like the way we gamble, Eric. Sometimes you want to fade when everyone else is going one way. So I'll look to get a little crazy here in the top half of the South. And then in the Zona Illinois game, I've got Zona moving through to the regional final in the South. Let's talk about the bottom part of this bracket, Eric. So go ahead and talk us through where we're at: Colorado State, Michigan, and then down to the Delaware Villanova portion.
I really like Colorado State's big man, David Rowdy. He can go down low. He can pull people out from the paint and knock down the three. And I really feel that Michigan's bigs, Dickerson or the freshman.
David Roddy's awesome too. He's 6'6", 255.
I really think Michigan's going to kind of have a hard time just defending that, and in the action Colorado State likes to run. And let's face it, Michigan State has really struggled this year. They've been a total Jekyll and Hyde team. They blew, Indiana had like a 31-13 run to beat them in the Big Ten tournament. Point guard play hasn't been up to sniff compared to last year. They're not making their threes. They've really struggled shooting the ball. I just think this is an end to a disappointing season for the Wolverines. So I have Colorado State going through. Tennessee and Longwood. Everyone wants to talk about Providence and how quote unquote lucky they've been. Longwood's right up there. I don't know. I don't like this Longwood team. I don't like this Tennessee team. Longwood, if they continue to make their threes, they could compete with anyone. But I think at the end of the day, Tennessee, defensive wise, is just way too elite for them. So I have Tennessee going through, setting up a second round matchup against Colorado State. Again, I'll respect Tennessee's defense here. They'll be able to keep Rodney in check. I have Tennessee going through. And then in the 7-10, Ohio State against Loyola. Loyola's got some experience. They have guys that made it to the Sweet 16. They have guys, the Williams kid was on the team that made it to the Final Four a couple years ago. And Ohio State's just kind of limped to the finish. They finished 10th defensively in the Big Ten. Also, Loyola offensively, they've looked a lot better, more crisp. This was a team I was looking to fade toward the end of the Missouri Valley Conference and was successful doing it. But offensively, they've kind of turned it up. I'll take Loyola here just because I respect their defense and everything and the experience that they bring to the table. Villanova, Delaware. I'll take Villanova here. Don't get me wrong. I love the Blue Hens team. Any old head basketball guy will remember Jameer Nelson. Jameer Nelson Jr. actually is Delaware's best player, but I think Villanova just has way too much. And the way to exploit Villanova is size, and Delaware just doesn't have the size. That sets up Villanova against Loyola Chicago in the second round for me. With them there, I just really feel like the first 1 to 50 wins. This is going to be a slow grind.
Ugly. Don't watch this game. Don't watch it.
But I think it's going to be. I'll take Villanova here just because I really like the way they use Gillespie in the post. They're posting up their point guard. I really like the action that they run with them.
And then another one, when things get tight for them, they're the number 1 free throw shooting team in the country. They shoot 82% from the free throw line. They're just the type of team when it's close where you don't really worry about them making a whole lot of mistakes. They don't turn the ball over a whole ton. But you're right. It's a size thing for them where if they run into a big team, they could be in some serious trouble because they don't play anybody on their roster that's over 6'8".
Yep. And Dixon had an illness during the Big East tournament, only played about 12, 14 minutes a game. So that's the big hole with them. And I think that's going to get exploited later on in the tournament.
So for me, just kind of going through this portion, the Colorado State Michigan game was one of the ones that I had the most difficulty with because everything you said about Michigan was spot on. And they've been really disappointing this year. They've struggled. They were supposed to be such a better team than they were. I mean, then you think about the Juwan Howard stuff. The guy got into it. He got suspended for 5 games throughout. In the last 10 games, they've alternated wins and losses every one. They just can't string anything together. They're still pretty good offensively, number 19 in offensive efficiency. I think in this situation, I probably go 1 game with Michigan. Maybe it's me where I'm a little a little bit cold on Colorado State in their conference this year. They beat Creighton, they beat St. Mary's, they beat the good teams in their conference. Their top, what's great about Colorado State is from like an experience and a cohesiveness. Their top 4 leading scorers are 3 juniors and a senior that have been at Colorado State all along their whole career, not transfers or anything. So they've been with this program. I don't love a couple of their losses. They got beat by 30 to San Diego State. They got beat by 20 to UNLV down the stretch. I'm not really high on Michigan, but I do think that Dickinson can help them enough to get through the first round. Then Michigan runs into Tennessee. I actually like the spot for Tennessee. I think I was with you. Tennessee was a team that I initially wasn't coming into the tournament thinking I was going to have going all that far, but I look at where they're matched up. I think you may have Colorado State in this. We'll talk in a second, but if it were Tennessee, Michigan, I think that'd be a nice spot for Tennessee to get right through there to set up a Tennessee Villanova matchup. I have Villanova getting through Delaware. I have Loyola getting through Ohio State. Like you said, I just haven't been all that impressed with Ohio State down the stretch. This is a team that's the number 13 offense. They're 131 in defensive efficiency. They are not good defensively at all. And Loyola is a team that's just pretty well coached. Sister Jeans here. They're back in the tournament. They were in the Final Four in 2018. Loyola is the number 7 shooting team in the country. And it's not necessarily like a team that's either really good from 3 or really good inside the arc. They're just a good shooting team, period. They're ranked 16th in 3-point percentage at 38%. They're ranked 15th in 2-point percentage, and they're number 22 overall in defensive efficiency. I'm going Loyola with the good offense. It's a bad matchup for Ohio State with their bad defense. I'm leaning Loyola there. So I've got Loyola, Villanova. I've got Villanova moving through there, setting up a Tennessee-Villanova matchup. And this is the game where I'm going to go Tennessee instead of Villanova. I think the defense of Tennessee, both of these teams, you talked about, defensively, what we can expect from them. And I think this may be where it's not as if Tennessee is huge, but I do think they might have a little bit too much here for Villanova. So I'm going to go Tennessee, Eric, moving through. You have a couple, Fulkerson, maybe we get Namakua. There's another big that's like a 7-footer that gets a little bit of run there. There's another guy that's 6'11" that gets some opportunity. I think Tennessee just has enough size, a couple different options to throw at Villanova there to make things tough. So I'm going to have Tennessee getting through, and I've got Tennessee hooking up with Arizona in the South Final in a rematch from earlier on in the year when Tennessee actually beat Arizona at Tennessee in what was a really good game, and a game that Arizona kind of got screwed by some pretty poor officiating late in that game. So I've got Arizona, Tennessee in the South Final. Talk us through. I think you got through some of it, but not through this bottom part.
Yeah, I have Tennessee against Villanova, but at the end of the day, I got 2 words: Rick Barnes. I just don't trust this guy. This guy historically, year after year after year, has had talent, and in March and in critical situations, he just hasn't lived up to it. And I think Jay Wright, I'll respect. Wright has won a couple national championships, and you look at how he has his program built. I think he'll Jay Wright alone will lead Villanova over Tennessee. That sets up Villanova against Illinois in my Elite Eight. And I'm not the biggest Illinois guy, but to me, it's all matchup bases. And this is going to be the matchup where Villanova inside is going to be exploited. And I have Illinois making it to the Final Four.
Yeah, if they were to get there, I would absolutely, in that type of a game, I would pick Illinois over, because they just wouldn't be able to do anything for Kofi. I'm not quite as high on Nova. Like, they're good, they're battle tested, and I agree with you with Barnes. I don't know if he could win the whole thing. It's funny because when you have coaches or players like that you don't believe in winning it all, I still think a lot of times they can get to a point. Is this the point they can get to? Because Jay Wright is very good. Is Villanova good, or are they still sort of living off of the Jay Wright, Villanova? We're kind of here every year. I don't know. I know that they do have a very good Gillespie and a couple really, really solid players there. So I'm not, I didn't know what to think about Villanova this year, honestly. And maybe it's still that UCLA game from early on in the year where I was, okay, they're fine. And a couple of their games against Creighton and down the stretch against Uconn, I thought, okay, like they're tough. They're tough. Like you're not going to play a Villanova game and come out of there easy. You're going to be banged up. You're going to be bruised. It was like you were talking about with the TCU stuff. Like a Villanova Tennessee game is another one of those rock fight games.
Yeah.
Where those two teams are just going to be punching each other in the mouth repeatedly. So I've got Zona getting through Tennessee here, and Arizona winning the South, moving through to the Final Four. Erik's got Illinois there, and that's sort of the game that will be important in both of our brackets, where Erik's got the Illinois moving through. I actually got Illinois probably losing right off the bat in the first round, but that's what's fun about these brackets. Difference of opinions and what's funny, Erik, is that, like I said, once Illinois, if they were to beat Chattanooga and then run into Houston or UAB, I don't think that would be a bad matchup. I don't know with Arizona with the size, but then if Illinois got through them, I really would love their matchup against probably either Tennessee or Villanova. So again, it really does all come down to the matchups, right? It's not as easy as just moving somebody in 3 rounds ahead. I think you always have to look at, okay, if I have this team winning and then I have this team winning, how are these two teams going to match up? You can't get too much ahead of yourself.
No, not at all. And it just comes down to matchups. But that's what makes it fun, because there's like one little turn,
and then everything's different, right? It's like the create your own story, create your own adventure, right? Yeah. You go down this road, you make a left turn, and then all of a sudden, instead of Illinois, Arizona, we got UAB in the mix, and then that changes the way that you handicap those games. So that's the South. We head down to the Midwest as we take a look at Kansas and Texas Southern. Got the job done last night. So that's the 116 spot. I've got Kansas moving through there. San Diego State and Creighton. I think Creighton, with some of their injuries, it's just going to end up being a little bit too much for them. I don't know at this point offensively if they have enough. I think without Nemhard around, they're just going to have a tough time scoring. They have a great defense, top 20. I think they're 18th in defensive efficiency. But I'm looking at this San Diego State team. This is a team that I've watched a lot throughout the year. I watch a lot of San Diego State being out here on the West Coast. They're on a decent amount, and you can find a lot of their games, and they end up playing a lot of sort of West Coast teams. They played USC earlier in the year, and USC beat them, but San Diego State was favored in that game. They're a good basketball team. They have the number 2 defense in the country, only behind Texas Tech. They are bad 2-point shooting team, though. 46% from inside the 3-point arc, but they're in really good form right now, Erik. They're 11-2 in their last 13, and both of those losses came to Boise, which tells me that, maybe that was a team that just has a number. It's a bad matchup for them, but they're well coached. They sort of show up in the tournament every year and always feel like they win a game or two or play really competitive basketball. So I like San Diego State getting through here. And then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to have back-to-back brackets where I get a little bit nuts. So I'm going to pick against Iowa. And this is another just a fading the sexy hot team right now. I think a lot of people saw Iowa win the Big Ten last week. I think a lot of people are going to want to jump on Iowa because they're a good scoring team. They're a good offensive team. They may have one of the best players in the country, and they probably have the best player on the court most nights they're playing in Keegan Murray. But their defense is bad. The Iowa defense is really bad. And it's the template of a defense that's going to get beat early on in the tournament. They are the number 2 offense in the country, the number 77 defense in the country. And Erik, I have a tough time. They were able to string 3 wins together recently and look good doing it in the tournament. Now, when you dig into some of those games, I don't want to use the word luck, which we were just sort of talking about, but that ball very easily could have bounced a different way for this Iowa team. They won a game in the Big Ten Conference tournament against Indiana by 3, where, they very easily could have lost that game. The game against Rutgers sort of flipped, and it ended up looking, a little bit more dominant than it was. The Purdue game was pretty close. And then that thing sort of flipped late. So I don't know, in looking at them, if people are going to really want to roll and if they're sort of that high, like sexy team, everybody just saw them win, sort of like Virginia Tech. I'm worried if they can't shoot great for one game, can their defense do enough? And you were talking a lot about this Richmond team throughout the year. You played Richmond to win their conference tournament. I like this story quite a bit with Richmond. They returned a bunch of their players from last year just for this opportunity, Erik. They are one of the oldest teams in the country. They have a bunch of 5th and 6th year seniors there. And the story that I wanted to mention, which is really, really cool, there's a player on their team named Grant Golden, and he's a 6th year senior. Back in 2016, 2017, he collapsed on the court and he underwent heart procedure. They gave him a medical red shirt, and he's played 4 years. And now he gets to go to the NCAA tournament for the first time, which is a really cool story. And so they're not going to be scared. They've won 4 in a row just to get here. They have 7 seniors in their 11-man rotation. Their top 6 rotation guys, 5 of them are seniors. So this team is going to be excited, and they're going to be ready to be here. They're going to be ready to play. I don't think they're going to be overwhelmed by Iowa. I'm going with the Spideys, Richmond Spiders. And then in the opposite game, right below them, this is a team that you've been talking about for a while, Erik. I'll let you praise them a little bit more, South Dakota State. For me, I was probably going to play almost any team that Providence showed up and played. Providence is the number 1 ranked team based on luck metrics. They have no stars, 5 players averaging double digits. So that concerns me in a game or in situations where, are they going to have the best player on the court? When things get slow, who goes and gets a bucket for them? They've been in a lot of close games. The ball bounced their way a lot of times, but even in conference, they had 3 games on their conference schedule that were canceled. All 3 of those games were games that they could have lost. 2 of them were on the road. Another one would have been a tough home game. I think they're just overvalued. I think they're overseeded. I'm going 12 Richmond over Iowa. I'm going 13 South Dakota State over Providence. Erik, South Dakota State is a pretty decent 3-point shooting team, right?
Decent's an understatement. They are by far the best 3-point shooting team in the land. They have a guy that is going to get a look in the NBA, maybe be a 10th, 12th man in the NBA. He'll definitely get some run in the G League. This is the thing. This is one of the smallest spreads in a 4-13 matchup ever. I got it. When it opened at 3, I got it. I have certain people in my life that only talk to me during NFL playoffs, fantasy football drafts, and March Madness. Those are the only time I hear from them. And I've gotten 4 messages saying, who should I pick? The only thing I know for sure is San Diego State's beating Providence. And that's like, you know what I mean? Like when you got people that really don't.
No, it worries me because it's a sexy pick. It's so like trendy for a dog. Everyone's jumping on this team. That does make me nervous. I agree.
So, but you know what? I got to stay to my guns. I've said it for a while. This is my team. So I'm going with the Jackrabbits. I have them going through. I have them beating Providence. Don't get me wrong. I love Providence. I love Ed Cooley. Ed Cooley is one of the most underrated coaches in America. And his thing he always tells his players, he goes, if you're within 5 and you get me to the under 4 media timeout, I will win you the game. And that's the type of coach as a basketball player I would love to play for. I think this guy's insanely underrated, but I'll take the Jackrabbits here. I think they just have too much offense.
They average 86.7 points per game, which is second in the country only to Gonzaga. They scored 90 or more points 7 times during conference play. They are number 1 in the nation in field goal percentage and number 1 in 3-point percentage. That's nuts, Erik, because normally when you shoot that many threes and you shoot that high of a clip from 3, your field goal percentage isn't going to be great. Yeah. Because you're just shooting so many threes that you're not shooting as many twos. You're not shooting as many high percentage shots. You're not going to have the best field goal percentage in the country. That's nuts. 21 straight wins for them. South Dakota State. They're going to be a live dog for many. I got them winning 2 games.
And the thing with them that's different than Vermont is they did have a couple dogfights, and they were pushed a little bit in the Summit Conference where they had to compete in the clutch situation, which is the last 5 of the game. So yeah, I got South Dakota State here. Iowa Richmond, look, I love the Spiders. They won me a lot of money last weekend. But the thing is this, during the regular season, this team was an absolute train wreck defensively. During the A10 tournament, they turned it on. Defensively, they looked a lot better, limiting teams to, I believe, like 61, 62 points per game. My thing with Iowa is this. I love the Murray kid. You know, I totally love him. He's definitely going to be someone on the next level. I think they just have too much offensively. And the thing with Iowa is their coach, Fran McCaffrey, he's never made it out of the first weekend. As crazy as it sounds, and with how good they've been, he has never made it out of the first weekend. I just have Iowa advancing just because the way you exploit Iowa is you have to be able to defend the 3 and you have a big. And Richmond doesn't have that. So I have Iowa against San Diego State. This game is a completely 180 from the Loyola Chicago Villanova game. This game is probably first one to 100 wins. These two teams are going to be going up and down, like shooting threes all over the place. I really want to take San Diego State, but I really feel they're going to be too trendy of a pick. Because of that, I will take Iowa. And then San Diego State Creighton. I mean, Nemhard not being there is going to be the weakness. That's why they're going to lose to San Diego State. Kansas over Texas Southern. Kansas, just too much pace, too many bigs.
Agbaji came back for this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Could have gone last year. He came back because he wanted to take them deep, and it's a good draw for them. It really is.
Yeah. So I like them there. And now this is the Sweet 16 for me. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I just got a text message that said the Lions may trade for Baker Mayfield, so I'm a little bit off my keister right now. So
that's funny. That's funny.
I'm sorry.
That seems bizarre. That's bizarre. But
that text message really just threw me off. So I'm sorry.
No.
This is the matchup where Kansas has the 3-point shooting, has the bigs, can defend the 3, and plays at the same pace as Iowa. I think this is when Iowa's defensive flaws are going to show. I have Kansas beating Iowa. Yeah, so that's Kansas coming out of the top part of the where we at.
Yeah, I got Kansas. I got Kansas beating South Dakota State. So I've got in 2 brackets. I've got the 12-13, and I've got South Dakota State getting through against Richmond. So I've got Kansas beating South Dakota State, Kansas into the regional final there in the Midwest. As we get to the bottom part of the final region, thanks everyone for hanging out with us here as we finish up the bracket. Good luck to everyone as you're building your bracket. You're putting your brackets in. You're getting any kind of action that you have on March Madness. So from here down, that 6-11 matchup. The one thing I thought was so funny about this bracket, Eric, was, man, there are so many teams on this in the Midwest that I wanted to fade throughout the year. Just the way that I play, I was always going to fade Iowa after that Big Ten championship win because I just think they're a little bit overvalued and overhyped right now off of that. I was always going to fade Providence because I just watching their games, watching the way that their season was built, knowing that they could have had a couple more losses and that they're overseeded, I was always going to fade them within a game or two based on their matchup. Iowa State has looked miserable down the stretch. I don't want to play them. LSU just fired their coach. We have no idea what they're thinking in their locker room. Wisconsin, their best player is hurt, and they are another one of those teams that we talk about the luck metrics. And you were right when you mentioned Longwood in that. Longwood is number 21 in luck and metrics, positive luck. Providence is number 1, and Wisconsin is number 8. The ball just bounced their way so many times in so many close games this year. That's the kind of thing you're not able to sustain that throughout a year. It's just not always going to bounce your way. And if it's not bouncing your way and your best player is also banged up a little bit, I'm concerned about them. So it's funny, this whole area. And then Auburn, I do not like Auburn at all. Auburn, I've been I think they're very phony. I think they're a very good home team. They do have one of the best players in the country, maybe the best. Other than that, I think they can stagnate a little bit. I like Bruce Pearl as a recruiter and someone to get the guys there. I think he's an absolute joke, honestly, a lot of the time. And he's a bad dude. Like, we just got to give this guy a free pass for all the shady crap that he's done through the years. And we laugh because he's got a good personality. He's out there smiling. He's done some shady stuff. So, Eric, I am going to get LSU through Iowa State. This was one of the harder games for me to decide, just like I said, because I didn't want to play either one of these two teams. But I'm going to go with like the angle that you and I would normally go with when a football coach gets fired. I'm going to say that LSU gets the bump and that their players look around and go, hey, let's rally the troops here. I don't know if LSU can win 2 weekends, but I think they can win 2 games here. Iowa State's offense was so bad late that I couldn't get them. I think you're on the Iowa State side, and you can talk about them in a minute. I mean, Iowa State's defense, though, is very good. So if LSU comes into this game and without their coach, and if they're feeling weird about that and they're not prepared, Iowa State will beat them because they won't be able to score on Iowa State. Then in the following game, I know a lot of people want to go Colgate over Wisconsin. I don't think I can quite get there with Colgate, but I will have Wisconsin losing in the next game to LSU because I think LSU at least has the athletes that can beat Wisconsin. With Scotty, they lost their last 2 games. I mentioned the luck rankings. They're not great with Ken Palm either, 34. The health of Johnny Davis. What's nice is they don't turn the ball over very much. They're number 2 in the nation in turnover percentage, so they're not going to really hurt themselves a whole ton. And, for Colgate, they are number 2 in the country in 3-point percentage. They won 15 in a row. And one of those games that they won, Eric, was by 5 points. Every other game was by more than that. They've scored 100 points in a game earlier in this year in a win against Syracuse. So they've beat quality and scored a lot of points in doing so. And there are only 2 teams in the whole country that shoot over 40% from 3. They're both in this bracket. They're the number 13 and 14 seeds in this bracket, South Dakota State and Colgate. I'm going to have Wisconsin winning there, losing to LSU. And then on the bottom, I'm a Trojan. I think the size of USC is just going to be a little bit too much from Miami. It's a fantastic matchup from opposites, right? Miami's got better guard play and better perimeter play than USC. USC's defense is a lot better, and USC is going to have a lot more bigs and wing type players than Miami will. So a very contrast of styles there. Mainly, like, I'm a USC fan. I don't think my team is the best team in the country or anything. I think in particular matchups, they could be good. I was not high on the ACC at all this year. I don't think the ACC was very good through a lot of this year, and I don't think Duke as the leading team in the ACC was great. I'm going USC over Miami, Auburn over Jacksonville State down there, Eric. And like I said, as a USC fan of the 2s, I didn't want to run into Kentucky. I didn't want to run into Villanova as much, although the size of USC might have been an interesting matchup against Villanova because they're kind of small and USC is a lot longer, so they may have had some trouble there. I don't like Auburn that much. Smith is going to be the best player on the court. I think we got a couple guys that we can at least throw at him. You can throw Chavez Goodwin at him a little bit. You can throw Mobley at him a little bit. Guarding wise, Peterson's not going to be able to athletically keep up with him, but he's sort of long enough to be another body. Max Agmon-Polo, another one. So I'm a fan. We're fans. You and I are gamblers. We're not homers. But in a situation like this, we're not going to always bet our teams. We're not going to go lay our teams as big spreads. But if I've got my team in a close situation, I'm going to lean with my team. If I've got a matchup where I think that it's close, give me the Trojans here. And I actually think the Trojans, again, looking at the matchup, I don't think Wisconsin's that scary. If USC got through Auburn, LSU, Iowa State, Wisconsin are not teams that would terrify me. I do not think USC would be able to get through Kansas, especially because last year USC beat the shit out of Kansas in the NCAA tournament. I think if they faced each other again, Kansas would really have a chip on their shoulder to want to beat them. So USC is a 1.5 point favorite. They could lose the first game, Eric, but I'm going to have them winning a couple games. I have them getting through on the bottom to run into Kansas. I have Kansas ending up getting out of the Midwest. But tell us why you're going to be against my fighting on Trojans here towards the bottom and go through the bottom part of this Midwest.
See, here's the thing. That game to me is another hard game. I've been going back and forth. Like
The Miami USC game.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is. It's a total pick 'em kind of game, right?
The stat of the tournament is Andy Enfield 15-1 against the spread
in the tournament, which is nuts. And I think he's 7-1 in their last 4 tournaments.
I mean, the only game he didn't cover is when they just got boat raced last year against Gonzaga.
And they were just not good enough.
Yeah, that was the only game. You know, on the BTV show, I said Miami. Last night, I changed it to USC, so I'll stick with that. I have USC.
Nice. There we go. Fine. And let's give, like, I've talked some positives for USC, right? But let's say some of the negatives for USC. If this game is close down the stretch, USC is one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country. That's a major concern. Now, it's good win a lot of the times, and then sometimes you'll wonder, because it always concerns me, Eric, and we're finishing up here. I know we both are going to be got to get out of here in the next 5 minutes or so. But it always worries me that, like, I look at players and I wonder, like, how are you a bad free throw shooter? Like, some players, like, for example, a guy like I look at, like Kyle Kuzma, he's not nearly as good of a free throw shooter as he should be, and you wonder why.
Yeah,
it's like why? Like Mobley shouldn't be USC shouldn't be bad free throw shooting team when Mobley, Boogie Ellis, and Drew Peterson are the 3 guys that have the ball in their hands the most. Like, why should any of those 3 guys be below average free throw shooters? It doesn't make sense, but then they are. It's a mental thing, right? When you get to the free throw line, it's just you and everybody else, and the game slows down. So that could be a weakness for them. But tell us, who do you have getting out of this bottom part? Kind of fill the rest of your bracket out.
It pisses me off because I had all these teams I wanted to fade, but when it comes down to the matchup, I just can't fade them in the matchup.
That's the key, right? That's the key, is that we got to be careful. Like I said, you don't want to just fade to fade. You got to make sure that it makes sense in how you're handicapping that game.
And I really feel, in order to beat, because Auburn does foul at an insane clip, you have to be able to make free throws.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I have Auburn beating USC at the bottom.
Sure. No, and it makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. That's not something that USC does well. If they do, some of those games that they did, one game they should have lost against Oregon State, they shot, I think, 18 for 22 from the free throw line. That's why USC didn't lose that game.
Yep. LSU Iowa State, I have a different take on it. My thinking is this LSU team is going to be going on probation. They're not going to be having any more tournament stuff going on after this whole Will Wade debacle. I really think that the kids on this team are more worried about where they're transferring next year instead of this year. Hey, let's
make a great point.
Run. I know people will mention the Steve Fisher stuff when Steve Fisher came in from Michigan. The difference is that Michigan team had 6 dudes that had at minimum a cup of tea in the NBA, and 3 dudes that had over 6 years in the NBA. So you know what I mean? That was a deep team that had dudes. This LSU team doesn't have dudes. Iowa State, great defensive team. And these games are at Pfizer. They're up in Milwaukee, tight rims. I think LSU is going to struggle defensively. And I said it, anytime LSU lays points, I'm fading. I got Iowa State here. Wisconsin against Colgate. This is in Milwaukee in prime time. Do you know how live that crowd's going to be?
I know. That's the thing, is that even if no matter what, they're going to be nuts.
Is going to be rocking. One of the best atmospheres I was ever at as a sports fan was when Wisconsin played Oregon the year before Wisconsin lost in the national championship game up at the old Bradley Center. Place was absolutely rocking. I have Wisconsin going through. Wisconsin gets Iowa State again. Pfizer, I'm not going to outthink it. That's going to be like a in facto home game for Wisconsin. I have Wisconsin going through, and then it's Wisconsin against Auburn. And I just feel that Auburn is just too big athletically. No, just too big and just has way too many athletes. I have Auburn beating Wisconsin. That's setting up a Kansas-Auburn in the Elite Eight. I just value Kansas too much, and I think they have a huge coaching advantage with Bill Self. I'm not the biggest Bruce Pearl guy. The fact I have them going to the Elite Eight pisses me the F off more than anyone will ever realize.
Well, because no, they got a great draw though. That's why I think USC's got a shot, because that draw down there, I don't love any of those teams all that much. So Auburn by default can maybe just back their way into the Sweet 16 Elite Eight.
Yep. And then I have Kansas beating Auburn. So my final 4 teams are Illinois against Kansas and Gonzaga against Kentucky.
I got Zaga, Kentucky, and Zona, Kansas. I'm a little chalkier than I would like to be in the Final Four, but I do have a lot of upsets kind of getting through the first round and then into the Sweet 16. So I've got Zona, Kansas with Zona getting through, and I've got Zaga, Kentucky with Kentucky getting through. My final, Eric, is Kentucky, Arizona. And in the national championship, I've got Kentucky and Shibwe. I mentioned, I just think they're upside. They shot really well, 37% from 3 in conference play. They're going to have everybody healthy. I think they have a ceiling. They're well balanced. They've got size. They've got speed. They've got perimeter. They've got coaching. They've been here. Give me Kentucky winning it all over Arizona. And a shout out to Arizona, led by former Gonzaga assistant coach Tommy Lloyd. Man, whether or not you or me or anyone likes Arizona in this spot, this was a fantastic job this guy's done this year, Eric. He took over a team that was right in the middle of a FBI investigation. They had all that crap last year. Sean Miller left. They were on probation. They weren't eligible. That's a lot going on. And he got this team focused, and they've played like a top team all year long. They got to prove it now, but compliments to him for getting them to this point and getting them a number 1 seed.
Yeah, they've completely overachieved. For me, I got Kansas over Illinois. I just feel like with their size, their pace, how they shoot the 3, how they defend is just going to be way too much for this Illinois team. So I have them advancing. When we did the show yesterday on BTV, I had Kentucky over Gonzaga. I referenced this gentleman a lot, my boy Brad, who taught me everything I know. Him and I had our discussion last night, and he's kind of talking into Gonzaga here. His point, and I mentioned it yesterday when we were doing our BTV thing, just the whole thing with Calipari, how when Shibwe gets in foul trouble, and he's done this with every big or every player he's had in the past, as soon as they get 2 fouls, he takes them out of the game. That's just what he does. And I really feel with the size of Timmy and Chet Holmgren is going to be too much for Kentucky in the interior. And when Shibwe, if he does get into foul trouble, the offense is going to struggle. So I actually have Gonzaga right now.
Because it would be hard for him. Those are, like we said, those are different bigs, right? Yeah. So he's got to try to guard different bigs, kind of gets pulled out to the 3-point line. Like if he's able to bang them down low, I don't think those guys could deal with him, right? But if they pull him out and they make him defend, like he has to, they make him work, right? They tire him out, stretch him out, and then he picks up a foul or 2, and then he's out. Like that's the template to beat them. You're right.
Yeah. So I think Gonzaga is going to win. That sets up Gonzaga against Kansas, and I think this is the year Few gets the hump off his back. I think this is the year that Few wins it. I have Gonzaga 80-74 over Kansas in the final.
Eric, buddy, over the last 2 days, you and I have talked about these brackets, I think 2 hours yesterday, about 2 hours today. We did the preview for the play-in games. We spent about 5 hours talking about these brackets. We did a Selection Sunday reaction. Are you sick of my voice yet, talking about these things?
Nah, man, not at all. Maybe
after Sunday, after we've done Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday shows for Cutting Nets every one of those mornings, maybe at that point you'll be like, Gino, can I get a day?
Right now, I'm good.
Give me a day off. I was going to say, I still love you too, brother. So thank you so much for all the time, my man. I know we both got places to go and things to do. So good luck. And for everyone out there paying attention, we will be live Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time for Cutting Nets. Those shows will be a little bit more point spread based. We'll talk about the lines in all of the games each day. So we'll also talk about who we have moving on in our brackets, but we'll talk about them more from a betting standpoint than we have in these games where we're just kind of projecting and moving everybody forward through. So thank you so much, buddy. Hope everything's going well with your pops and your family out there, and look forward to talking to you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, man. Talk soon.
Don't go anywhere, folks. It's March Madness. We're going to hear from someone else next, and we're going to talk some best bets with Jack Fitzpatrick.